Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to welcome you to my keynote speech. Also, professors, lecturers, and students. My name is Roland Csizmazia. I'm a dual citizen of Korea and Hungary, and I have worked for over 10 years now at Kwangwoon University in Seoul, South Korea. My courses are completely related, but my research interest is a little bit different. I am very grateful to be able to join this conference in this year. Many thanks for the excellent organization to the Eurasia Research team and the organizers of the 5th International Conference on Social Science and Humanities in Budapest and in Zoom as well. This is a great opportunity given by the organizing committee to share our research findings and our insights and our motivations as well. Let's look at the topic related to the impact of COVID-19 at South Korean higher education, and also the relaunch of the classes afterwards. So, if you look at the overview, recent challenges are there, and even before COVID-19, and they were actually just accelerated and even strengthened by the COVID-19 pandemic. We also know that South Korea has long been admired for its rapid economic development, and of course the higher education also. In South Korea, the successive governments proactively intervened in higher education, or at least tried to intervene proactively in the higher education, which resulted in actually in quick fixes afterwards. To achieve a concentration of knowledge in renowned universities with outstanding research performance. This led immediately to that most of the universities in rural areas are compelled to shut down, reduce the departments, or merge with other institutions of higher education. So the problems generated by the worldwide COVID-19 pandemic has not only accelerated the transition process, but also eliminated other problems and confirmed that the internationalization of the universities, a policy pursued by inviting renowned foreign professors and attracting international students, is real fragile. Even countries endowed with well-established hubs of higher education have been adversely affected by the sudden drop in the number of foreign students. Now, the methodology of this analysis is or the findings are based on the empirical analysis, including the author's personal observation that have been made during the first few semesters of COVID-19 pandemic impact. The crisis of the South Korean higher education could be characterized as follows. We see here the lack of continuity of the governmental policies, then haze, or rather characterized by quick fixes, and therefore there are many redundancies and inefficiencies. And Shin also emphasized that in 2015 that the current post-secondary education institutes lack a clear-cut mission differentiation and orientation. So these problems generated the perception that they cannot operate efficiently. Furthermore, faculty members must excel in several fields. In general, there is a little separation between research and teaching staff at the universities. Each colleague or department needs to decide whether it should concentrate on improving the quality of teaching or on enhancing the faculty research performance. This is not the case. And additionally, now during the COVID pandemic, an online material creation, an online material generation as extra work came in. Accordingly, the workload became unbearable to many professors at the university. So the major financial source used to be the tuition fee, which cannot not be increased anymore due to the tuition fee freeze imposed in 2011, while the universities increasingly rely on the government's financial support. Tuition revenues per student have decreased, and the number of students has also undergone a rapid decline due to the accelerating aging of the Korean population. The government's financial support is focused on major universities that are capable of increasing their research output. So, introduction of regulations by the Ministry of Education to monitor the activities of the universities, to identify redundancies and to curb rising costs. And this were basically carried out so that the Ministry of Education can see whether these universities could be subsidized or not. So regular monitoring. Now, the internationalization of higher education also coincided with the problem posed by the increasing aging of the population, the declining number of the domestic students, and the consequential decrease of tuition fees forced the universities to aggressively recruit international students. Additionally, there is a problem about the confusion of online learning. Remote distance education was first introduced in the United States in 1944 for the purpose of educating millions after the World War II. The administration's intention was to set up standards for the correspondence schools that needed to introduce courses related to the repairment of televisions and radios at that time. Yet, here the Korean government actually uses the buzzwords like online learning, online class, then web-based learning, etc., without any clear classification, and online learning goes mainstream as new normal was basically advertised or promoted as well by the government. And then after a year, so that was in 2020 and 2021, the government indeed tried to motivate universities to relaunch classes offline, seeing that how rapidly the quality of teaching actually and education, higher education quality diminished or decreased indeed. So, however, online learning may not be described just as a correspondence learning. It includes various methods, and instead it might be regarded as a way of knowledge acquirement where the bulk instructions is offered via computer and internet. So again, the problem here was that there is no clear distinction, no clear classification. Also, at the same time, what we know, unfortunately, the South Korean Minister of Education provided no clear definition of the concept of remote online class for universities, but only for secondary education. And the sole formulation created was a rule that stipulated the length of content required for one single credit, which actually from one semester to the other semester also changed again. The lacking definition of content created a situation where lecturers could also use videos from video sharing platforms such as Dailymotion, Vimeo, or YouTube. And what we realized that a high number of professors actually created no or very little content. Consequently, several problems became apparent, such as the issue of copyright violation and the misuse of this time devoted for the content creation. No teacher received additional training on how to prepare recorded or online course content. It is obvious that no teacher could deliver quality content either in pre-recorded form or in live streaming form. Teachers tried to offset the time loss basically by uploading videos to various video sharing platforms and binding in those kind of content without much regarding the copyright issues. Now, so once we had the copyright issues, then second we see that the high number of or high proportion of Korean students became very disappointed by seeing how professors generate their or produce their contents, because they can compare this content creation to EBS, professional creation. EBS is the Education Broadcasting Services or Education Broadcast System. I don't remember exactly. So it's actually a multiple number of TV channels. So the content itself is generated by professionals and not simply by professors who did not have or did not receive the appropriate and the necessary training to create audiovisual content rather than live content. Additionally, it must be said that praxis-related classes suffered a lot because university students may not have the equipment that they use or they should use during teaching and during learning. New methods of knowledge assessment had to be implemented. Another problem also we can mention here, the authentication, because we never know who watch actually the content. We don't see the actual person in a real life. So we don't know if that person, for example, also attended really the examination or somebody else did that for that person. Now, the government acted proactively to remain positive on foreign student influx. That's very important because therefore the decrease was not as strong and as tremendous as in the case of Australia, Singapore, and the USA. So, for example, a report titled Coronavirus and International Students Prepared by Harley in 2020 observed that the loss in enrollment accounted for 12.3% in Australia, and the new visa status application dropped by 99%. So nearly no more students actually wanted to go to Australia. Therefore, also not just temporary workforce, but also permanent staff lost job. So there was a high number of job losses in education sector. Not only in Australia, but also in the States, where a drop of 43% in first-time enrollments and a decrease of 16% in overall enrollments were revealed. So here we can see the Korean numbers. While the most renowned international higher education hubs have greatly suffered from the sudden decrease in the number of international students, South Korea, relying as it did on students from the East and Southeast Asian region, proved to able to maintain a relatively high level of international influx with a total number of 153,000, so a drop merely 4%. We can also realize that this drop is actually a cumulated drop number, a total number, whereas in a case of simple undergraduate students, 10% drop was observable, and an increase of graduate students, so the number of graduate students heavily increased rather than decreased during the first part of the COVID, so 2020. Also, we need to say that fortunately both the central government and the local authorities introduced regulations to mitigate the impact on xenophobia. At present, it is nearly impossible to enter South Korea. Actually, now it's again completely possible, but at that time it was nearly impossible, and that was 2020, except if you were a student. And the South Korean government set up an inter-ministerial team led by the Ministry of Education to create clear guidelines and to smoothen entry procedures for foreign students. And let's also talk about the course content related regulations. Now, the South Korean universities attempted to become proactive, as I mentioned. Consequently, the regulations greatly varied from university to university because the a high level of autonomy was still maintained, and only guidelines were adopted, or recommendations were provided. The only common element that could be observed is the implementation of real-time and recorded content creation. The responsibility for the actualization of the content creation was passed to the instructors without any detailed information about the preferred nature of content. Now, during the first semester of 2020, instructors received updates and instructions in a regular manner. They should have changed rapidly, like this. So once do an online real-time class. No. Let's do a recorded class. Oh no, let's implement again some offline, on-site, so on-campus classes because of the nature of the lecture. So in my case, practice-oriented classes. The minimum teaching time for the content was set to 25 minutes per credit. That was at the very beginning, and then suddenly from the one semester to the other semester, in case of the 3 credits, the professors had to develop classes of 150 minutes rather than 75 minutes long in a week. So we see here this kind of numbering or lettering the lecture operation methods, so R, T2, T3, and B1, and then here face-to-face T1, and here we can realize experimental or practical. So my point would have been actually on-site lecture, but it was never an on-site lecture. So yeah, it was an interesting situation where the government said something and recommended something. The university also wanted to explain what we should do. At the end, I actually gave up, and I said, okay, just let's do what the government or KCDC, so the Korean Agency for Disease Control and Prevention, KDCA actually explains and wants us to do. Now, another problem was that the university administration has never checked the quality of the recorded classes, but only the length. So, therefore, many professors just try to find the way out from the situation of having lack of little or no time to recording classes. By uploading already ready or finished or completed contents from YouTube and other video providers. The interaction between professors and students also suffered a lot due to lack of time for content creation and lack of motivation to communicate from both sides, indeed. This resulted in decreasing quality of education. And Zhang et al. And Wotmeyer pointed out that teachers did not necessarily have the appropriate skills to be able to suddenly and easily switch from face-to-face education to online teaching, and then back and forth all the time. In response to the recent changes brought by the pandemic, instructors resorted to practices of learning by doing or imitating the face-to-face approach, which could lead in quality loss in the education. I say Hodges et al. In 2020 said or revealed a temporary shift to a new teaching method under crisis circumstances cannot be compared to a well-planned and well-designed remote online education system, which we just could see by EBS, so the Education Broadcast Services or Education Broadcast System. This obviously led to an unsatisfactory performance level of teaching staff, and the practice-oriented courses assessment could not be really well designed, especially because of the lack of standardized assessment taking. As for the financial impact, many rural universities dropped the tuition fees for the moment, so that they can attract more students again. And then they asked for subsidies from the government rather than keeping the level of subsidies. Now, there was an attempt to increase tuition fees for foreign students, also without any success. That's it. And I created some recommendations. So first of all, both higher education participants, so universities and government, should implement regulations with standardization with the entire sector. So no simple guidelines or recommendations, but really clear regulations, so that there are no fixes and also no changes all the time, but regulations which could be maintained for at least one single semester, and so not up and downs and changing and twisting around. Also, university administration should not simply guide faculty members, but they should cooperate with them. So all the stakeholders should be included in decision-making process, rather than letting them out and thinking that they will do everything as we tell them. Standardized assessments should be implemented to reduce workload, both to inform students and to the professors. And these kind of standardized assessment taking could also help students to prepare better for their exams, because they can not only talk to their peers, so course mates, but to all the other people on various websites related to Kwangwoon University. So, for example, in my case. Now, there is a need and necessary a demand for communication always, and therefore this must be, so this kind of isolation between lecturer and student must be reduced by any means, that is by social media platforms such as KakaoTalk in South Korea, Line in countries like Thailand or Japan. And also so the communication should not be one-way communication, but two ways at least, if not, group to professor or professor to group. Applications of regularly scheduled teamwork supports also the time management skill development, so that is basically this kind of Zoom breakout rooms could be available for teamworks, and that helps also to maintain the time, so that professors, for example, if they say, please solve this kind of situation or this programming issue within 10 minutes with your peers in the breakout room, and then present it, then the students will also focus on the time and do not have the problem what they have now with time management issues once lecture is on site. We can observe that there are no more rapid changes of teaching methods in 2022. We can also observe that the university or many universities allow now a so-called blended learning, where one class is online and the other class in a week is offline. So two classes for one course in every single week, but one of them is on-site and one of them is online. Previously applied knowledge assessments cannot be applied without any limitations. We need see that we need some kind of standardization and time management. We mentioned, and the use of relative grading is a kind of double-sided sword. If, for example, a student, in my case, I do not really push them, I do not really care about them, then they feel happy, but their employability is worsening, versus if in this case I also have to say that in this case, if I don't care about them that much, my evaluation grade is higher, so that they are happier again. But once again, the problem is the employability. And in this case, if their employability is low, then they must go for more education, which leads to financial pressure in families due to the demand for more education and more payment. Once again, there is another problem. The main focus of internationalization became a single country, Vietnam, and obviously that's not very helpful in the case when relocation of the operations happen. Now universities also see that, and hopefully they will share this kind of efforts to find students abroad and to invite them to our universities rather than simply just focus on one single country. The administration staff still considers itself as the only responsible body for regulation creating, and that's an issue, as I mentioned, and the standardization efforts are necessary. So about the conclusion, as I mentioned, the South Korean higher education is in a process of continuous evaluation into a regional higher education hub. And a very necessary point is that there is no more potential for the quick fixes, but hopefully there will be made only strategic and long-term decisions rather than testing all the flexibilities for students and for professors or lecturers. Now, tuition fees should not be differentiated between foreigners and domestic students. University students, so university granted scholarship should focus on domestic students, and government granted scholarship should focus on both without any differentiation to attract international students with, for example, a kind of binding that is that these students must work for a Korean company 5 years long, otherwise they have to repay all the scholarships they gained during their studies. Lecturers and professors need a regular live training to produce online content, not online training, not recorded online training, because lecturers and professors do the same what students do. They just let it go and just play it, and they don't pay any attention at all. Administration should check not only the length of, but also the quality of the content. So no outside content, or lower the number or the proportion of external content from YouTube, etc. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention and for your time. And if you have any question related to the topic, please, or if you have any opinion or idea, please share with me. Thank you once again. And once again, thank you so much for this organization. Thank you. Bye.